Hello, world. This is Hello Chaos, the podcast about the trials and tribulations, highlights, and low points of entrepreneurship. We like to talk with people, get their stories, and find the nuggets, the details about what makes their businesses work, how are they moving forward, how are they getting started. So excited to be here today. I am Jennifer Oladipo, aka Jen O.
And I'm Jennifer Sutton. Just Jen. Need a nickname?
Still working on it.
Still working on that. And then today's guest, we have really excited to have him here. It's Joe Panettieri. After we just went through that,
You're
Joe
all good. Don't worry.
Panettieri from Channel E2E. Welcome, Joe. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
Hello,
Joe.
Chaos.
A little bit of chaos there in the beginning.
We're all about chaos.
Just two quick sound bites before we even begin. So, hello, chaos. I love the name because people always ask me, like, what's your job? And I say, it's organized chaos. So
that's right. That is right.
Like I have a plan, but it's still chaos in terms of my day-to-day. And then Jen, I'm from Long Island, and we've got our share of great Italian restaurants here. One of the most famous, which has since closed down, but it was around 60, 70 years, was J&J's. J&J's Southside.
There we
so
go.
Jen, it's nice to connect with you.
That's right.
J&J.
I love
like
it. The
that
J&J's.
one. Yeah.
The Jens.
There you go.
I love it.
So you were just starting to get into some juicy stuff before we started. But first, just tell us a little bit about Channel E2E. You know, I know you from the flip side, where you were the interviewer with a client, and so been watching you. Oh my gosh, that's been like 7 years now, I think, or I don't know,
give or take.
Yeah.
Watching you.
And
That's
thank
crazy.
you, by the way. You were always so kind to me on the PR side and all the help you always offered to me. So thank you. I appreciate it. So for folks who don't know me, my background is technology journalism. I used to work on like big technology trade magazines back in the day. Like everyone else, I hit that inflection point where I had to make a career change because print was dying, 20 some odd years ago. And I got into digital media. And I'll tell you where I am today, and then we can rewind from there and feel free to ask questions about that journey. So where I am today is I'm co-founder of two media sites. Channel E2E, which stands for Entrepreneur to Exit. So we focus on IT consultants and MSPs and their journey building out their businesses from entrepreneur to exit, everything that involves. The sister site is MSSP Alert, and it covers managed security service providers and the cyber world and everything that's going on there 24/7. So, I've been around, it's jargon, forgive me, but I've been around the IT channel for a couple of decades now. So for people who are like, what is the IT channel? The short and sweet of it is, think of every local real estate firm, every local insurance firm, everyone on your main street in your town. Someone's managing the technology for them. They don't have an IT staff, so they outsource it to our readers, the channel. The channel deploys and manages IT for all these small and mid-sized businesses across America. So that's my background. And we did
like us.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. And my business partner, Amy Katz, and I, this is our second startup that we've launched, built, and sold. And we are now with the new ownership that acquired our business in October of last year. And that owner is Cyber Risk Alliance, which is acquiring various cyber involved businesses nationwide.
So what made you decide to sell this? But it sounds like you're still involved. So it's not like you just sold it and said, we're walking away. You guys are still involved in it. So tell me about that decision. Why did you make that selection?
Yeah, I think I'll continue with that town metaphor, right? I was talking about Main Street USA and the businesses. So imagine if you owned a house and it was a really good house, right? Great house. But you had the opportunity to plug into a city where there are all these services available, a better electric grid, for instance, better broadband, all this talent in that city. Rather than like take our house and build all these new rooms onto it or add an extension next door, we're like, let's plug into an existing city. But what would that mean? What are we good at, and what would the other city neighbors be good at? We're really good at building digital media sites, engaging our readership, doing webcasts, doing podcasts like this. We have the skills, but we don't have the time or the resources to build face-to-face events. What if we could plug into a larger company that has that face-to-face event skill, conference skill. Also, we have some podcast expertise, but what if we could plug into a platform that has just 24 by 7 podcast expertise and syndication and amplification? So that's the long and the short of it. Like, why did we sell? Synergies. And I know that word is like, oh yeah, I hear synergy all the time, but you could literally create a column of our talent, like column A, what is our talent at Channel E to E and MSSP Alert? And then column B, what is Cyber Risk Alliance's talent? And the synergies there are true. You can just map it and be like, oh yeah, these two things fit together. And not only that, it's a multiplier. It'll help Channel E to E and MSSP Alert scale.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. Is like, how did you make the decision? Was it that the opportunity came up and you were like, you know what, let's go along with this, see where this conversation takes us? Or was it that you were looking to scale in a certain direction, adding the events and such, and we're trying to figure out how to do that?
Yeah. So I'm half of the conversation in terms of like our portion of the business. I run the content and a lot of the digital media, not all of it, but a lot of it. My business partner is Amy Katz, and she and I have known each other for more than 20 years. I'm getting old. She's not. But what happened was, as we were trying to figure out, again, do we start hiring talent in face-to-face events? Do we start hiring employees, et cetera? There was a moment of a spark, just a moment I'd call it, where a person introduced us to Cyber Risk Alliance. And that very quickly began conversations of, hey, let's just talk about what a face-to-face event would be like. And that very rapidly scaled into let's partner. And that very rapidly moved to, well, what if we bought your company? And so we weren't out, like, we didn't run a process. Our previous business, I don't want to call it a process, but our previous business that we sold in 2011, 2011-ish, we were actually entertaining offers from 3 or 4 different companies and sort of working through that. This one was just discussions, strategic alliance. No, let's just M&A it. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So what was that moment like? I mean, like, you've reported on that exact situation happening countless times. So what's it like when it's you and it's your company that someone's saying, what if we buy you?
Well, the thing is, I think the big thing is you never expect lightning to strike twice. When we sold our previous business in 2011, I thought that was a one-time event in my life. And it was an awesome event, a miracle event in many ways. But in 2011, blogs were still somewhat new in certain niches or set market segments. They were super hot. Digital media was starting to take off. So there was a lot of M&A activity. Fast forward to 2021. Yeah, digital media is still hot. But this time around, I don't think I ever expected. I can't speak for my business partner, but from my vantage point, I didn't think we'd ever get acquired or look to get acquired, But I think the reason lightning struck twice was alignment and vision of, I'll give you a prime example. Our first deal, we definitely talked about, okay, how would things come together and where would the business go? Second deal actually had a written plan before we even signed the document to sell the business, which is that requires building trust. And I think the secret, a lot of people tell me when they sell their businesses, or even when you sell a house, right? And you're negotiating between the buyer and the seller and the brokers involved, lawyers may be involved. What it ultimately comes down to is building a little bit of trust across the table to understand what each side wants. And there's a great consultant, Paul Dipple, over at a company called Service Leadership, and he says those two sides of the table, there has to be a little bit of discomfort on both sides. Like, both sides can't get everything they want. Like, it just doesn't happen that way. So if you can build trust and find that area of commonality, boom, the spark happens and the deal happens in a good way. And I don't mean boom, it blows up negative. Excuse my Italian heritage.
No, I was laughing because I was like, why does it always sound like people are talking about marriage counseling whenever we get to this part of the conversation?
I know. And you, not only did you have to come and have an alliance with the other party, but what was it like between you and Amy? Having to, was that an easy decision that you guys were both aligned, or just talk about that?
Yeah, so here's a very interesting thing, some tidbits about Amy Katz and I. Amy Katz is the ultimate business builder. She is the ultimate, we became the ultimate friends. At first we were, just business associates. Then it blossomed into like the ultimate friendship. She lives in
that's awesome.
Massachusetts, and I'm on Long Island. And, we met at Big Media 20 years ago. And then we both quit a full-time job in 2008 and started our first business together in 2008.
Wow.
What we didn't know when we were going into it, we sort of knew, but we didn't really know, is we have very similar ethics, morals, values, financial. Like, we both live below our means financially. Like, when we sell a business, we don't go out and buy an expensive car or anything showy. It's about, okay, let's just continue to be who we are. And I think so you asked me what was the process with me and Amy, and were we on the same page? I think one of the most important things is your timing similar, and is your number similar? Like, do you have a somewhat similar view of what the business is worth, right? And what if one party thinks it's worth I'll just throw a number of I don't know, a number of one. One party thinks it's worth one, but the other party thinks it's worth 80% of one. That's a 20% delta you got to solve for, right? And then what if you get an offer for 85 cents on the dollar rather than the one that the one business owner wanted and the 80 cents that the other business owner wanted? So we were fortunate. We weren't exactly the same, but we were both in the neighborhood, and we both had an agreement. Like, if offers coming in below this number, we're not taking them. There's no going back. You can't say, well, I want X, but now I'll do X minus 30%. Like, what? Know your number, I guess, is the point. And if you're similar in your ethics and your morals and your financial approach to life, you'll be okay.
So here you and Amy start a business coming out of basically being in the corporate world for what?
Let's not date.
Quite some time. Don't age
some time. Yeah, I won't date you. And then 2008, you guys launched this business together. Was that with the exit in mind of like, hey, we're building this to sell and exit within 3 years or 5 years, and so you guys went in to have those conversations of, this is the number, like, these are our...
So we never intended to sell. What happened was, and just to be clear, to reiterate for the viewers and listeners, the first business we launched, built, and sold, that was 2008 to 2011, and that was also a media business. And then we stayed with that ownership till like 2014-ish, and it was a wonderful journey. We were very fortunate. But your question, like, did we go in and launch this business knowing we would sell? No. But what we did learn along the way was that, like, when we launched the business, I forget what day it happened, but it became so clear that Amy was the CEO, just because of her business acumen, talent, and like a long list of things. And I was more like the IT guy and the media guy. Like, I would build the
producer.
platforms and it just was wonderful synergy. But what happened along the way was, from day one, I really understood our metrics on the website side and how the audience was going and how we were growing that. And on Amy's side, from day one, she really understood the financial side of it, the growth, the profitability, and what that all meant. And when we did decide to sell, these weren't receipts in a shoebox that we handed to a potential suitor. Like, Amy is so buttoned up on the financial side, she could have told you our financial performance of every month since launch.
Wow.
And et cetera. Like, you ask for the metric, she would either know it off the top of her head or she'd go get it with you within minutes. So, like, buyers knew that we knew our numbers and we were serious about our business, but we also enjoyed our business. We weren't so serious that we weren't like having fun. We always had fun.
Yeah. And then, so that first buyer, and that first, was that part of the agreement of, hey, you guys were going to stay on for 3-4 years as part of the exit,
Yeah.
offboarding? And so
Yeah.
that was planned out. Is that?
Yes, that was. So, and we could have stayed longer. The buyer was great to us, and I think we did right by the buyer as well. I think we did a really good job for them. That was a good relationship. But I think Amy and I, we didn't leave to go start another business.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, what? You left, and then it's like,
Yeah.
You got hooked.
we're
No,
doing it again.
Yeah, what happened was I don't want to paraphrase Amy's thoughts because
Sure.
they're her thoughts. I'll just paraphrase my thoughts. What happened when we left was I told Amy word for word, I need silence to hear again. And what I meant by that was there's so much noise in my head from building this business and being so active in it. I need to step away from this noise, this overwhelming noise of the IT industry, and just observe it from afar, almost like looking down from a mountain and looking at a town rather than being in the middle of the town and hearing the crowd and the hustle and bustle. Like from staring at that mountain, you could see new buildings coming up, right? And new activities.
Yeah.
And now you get your vision again for, okay, what should we build next? And that was what should we build next wasn't the plan. But Amy and I spoke with each other every day for 6 months, not working. We were done. We were just taking time off. And we just started talking, like, if we were going to build a business again, what does that mean? But those 6 months of discussions was mostly about how's your family, what's going on in your life, blah, blah, blah. And then we came back and we consulted for maybe a year, did some stuff here and there. And then Amy and I wanted to build a website that was about our journey, but reflecting the market, the entrepreneur to exit journey. And that's why we built Channel E2E.
And boom. I mean, you guys pretty much, I mean, there aren't that many people in that space. And so, I just from speaking from what because I was trying to pay attention to all the media in that space at the time. And, I didn't know your background then, but it makes so much sense now that you were coming from a founder perspective, which is pretty different from the other media that, dominate the space.
I could relate to the business owners.
Yeah.
So could Amy. So the business owners that we cover are IT companies, like IT consultants who work closely with software companies and distributors and hardware companies. And much like the cloud market, they have recurring revenue models, right? Monthly subscription models. And so did we. Amy built a business in terms of the financial model she built was basically an annual subscription for the sponsor. And so while we were not our readers, we could relate to our readers without a doubt,
Yeah.
And I think the magic is, people say, is the American dream alive or dead? I know times can be tough. Economic cycles come and go. COVID came. But ultimately, it's always alive. And I think one of the most wonderful things about the country and the tech industry is that ability. I think the greatest gift in this industry is to create jobs. I'm not very good at creating jobs. I am good at covering those who do. So at least I'm trying to bring up to it.
You're amplifying that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Exactly.
So people know where to go for the jobs.
Which is important.
And it's a wonderful industry. All these small business entrepreneurs building out the tech stack. If you think about COVID and how the lights could have gone off across America for a gazillion small businesses, I know retail was particularly hit hard, no doubt, and I empathize with that. But many industries, the lights stayed on and actually became brighter because of the technology infrastructure that was managed and everyone working remotely and staying productive.
That's right. So along this journey, what were your biggest aha? As you said, the ahas that turn into oh shit, or the oh shits that turn into aha moments. What were the biggest ones?
Right. So I think there were a few before we even started. So my biggest career aha moment before we even started a business, and this is me personally, was in 2001. I was at Ziff Davis Media, which was a wonderful company. It's still around in various forms. But Ziff at that point, I was working on a print magazine. It was 2001. The 9/11 attacks happened. The .com implosion happened. My magazine went out of business, and so I was on the street, unemployed, for about 3 or 4 months, and I was freelancing. And freelance was good. I enjoyed it, but I had two aha moments. I kept on, not a lot, but I got a couple of job offers in print magazines. An aha moment was, don't go into a shrinking market. Like, don't look back. You need to look forward. What does that mean? Aha moment number two was, you're freelancing for all these other brands, which is great. And I don't want to knock it, because you never know. Maybe somewhere down the road I'll be freelancing again. I'm at this job. I love this job, but I'm 52. So if someone's watching this when I'm 65 and I'm freelancing, there you go. You'll end up as a freelancer. But I guess the point is this. Aha moment one was like, don't go into a shrinking market that's never going to turn around. And that was print, right? Aha moment number two was, if you're freelancing, it's a nice living, but you're not building an asset. So I knew I had to build an asset. And what does it mean by an asset? A media company, it's more than a website. It's the database of readers, and the danger of that is over monetizing those readers and making them feel like they're being used. What you really want to do is nurture and engage those readers, and treat them like the unbelievably valued audience that they are. And then have them trust in you that the services that are coming through your website are high value services. So I think that was aha moment too. Like, how do you build a not only a media site, but the database behind it and the audience and everything else? And that's a journey. And maybe aha moment number three. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Let's get number three, and I'll get my question in. What was number three?
Aha moment number three was, there's that old line from Field of Dreams: if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
What you got to do is somehow build it, and figure out what it is without anyone seeing it. And what I mean by that is, when we were, I'll give a prime example. When we were building
I feel your pain, Joe. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Just for the listeners and the audience, we're recording this pre-launch, and so we are like right in.
We're right there. We're right there.
You
You're speaking to me, Joe. I mean, like I'm feeling you.
You're doing exactly what I did, right? And what Amy and I did when we launched Channel E to E, we built it behind a firewall. And I wrote 8 hours a day for 6 months, give or take. And Amy and I would talk each day, like, what is the content? And I'm like, it's sort of like writing an album, right? I don't know until the album's done. And like, is it going to be like a classic rock album where every song leads into the next? Or is it more of a pop song where every song is individual and there's no overarching theme? Like, what is it going to be? I don't know. I'm sitting at the keyboard every day and essentially writing music. In this world, it's writing, developing content. You do that behind a firewall for 6 months, and you step back monthly, and you begin to see how all the content moves into categories. And you begin to understand, my voice is going to be X, my target's going to be Y. And you begin to understand where you're going. And then one day you have to have the nerve to turn off the password and turn off the firewall and let everyone see it, which is nerve-wracking. So good luck with your journey, and let me know when you turn off the password and let everyone see what you're up to.
Wait. I want to back into that moment just a little bit. I mean, like, what's going through your mind? Because you put 6 months, 8 hours a day into this thing. You've got the money, the commitments, and everything. Like, what's going through your mind when you turn on the lights? Even though this is, your second venture.
Well, I think I'll actually rewind. Like, if you always ask me about like those OS moments, and I think the biggest one was actually our first business, and when you turn it on for the first time. In 2011, we had we knew how to blog and write on third-party websites, but we had no idea if the site would scale when we turned them on. We had no idea if the ad servers were going to work. These were all like we've been using them for 2 months behind a firewall.
Right.
It was just Amy and I hitting the sites. You turn off the password and let everyone see the sites. Are they going to scale? Are they even going to work? Like, we held our breath when we turned on the sites in 2008, and thank God they worked. But in 2011, In 2011, I think it was humble pie, in that we knew it was the right idea, but you forget when you're starting at zero. Like, you're starting at zero readership.
Mm-hmm.
The previous audience we had built had grown to, like, roughly, not an exact number, roughly, 50,000, 60,000 monthly readers. And to eat humble pie and start from zero again, all over again. So, you get 50 readers the first day. You're like, oh my God, I'm a failure. But then you watch the analytics, and every week the general trend is up, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a hockey stick. Here it comes. And boom, it happens. So I think it's a matter of being humble that day. The day you launch, you have to be so humble and ready to eat a humble pie that if you build it, they may not come. But if you keep articulating it and echoing your message, they'll come. The right message, they'll come.
That's right. And Joe, I'm curious with media technologies and that's your space. What's been the biggest change? I mean, has social media influenced, or blogging has kind of changed of how people absorb? Obviously, webcast, podcast, just the diversity of how people consume and want to consume. Has that, like, how did you guys navigate that? And as you guys are going into this new endeavor with new ownership and expanding it even further, like, what is that journey like now? And how are you guys analyzing and reporting on performance?
Right. Great questions. And boy, like, if you ask me those questions at different points in the journey, my answers would be so different. Because, like, when we launched our first business in 2008, it was right around the time that Twitter and Facebook were all, getting their tipping point moment. So we were fortunate. We had channels on all those sites from day one, and it was like, oh my gosh, they're socially media engaged and yada yada. Right? So we were super smart. Well, no, we were really lucky. We were really lucky with our timing. So it had nothing to do with being smart. Now, where it gets interesting, fast forward to present day, you won't see me much on Facebook. I soured on Facebook. I know it's hugely important, and I'm trying to re-engage. But it doesn't matter if your views are extreme left or extreme right. That's okay. I respect you. I just can't take the shouting between the two views. And the fact that there are some great comedians out there who tell you, like, why ask a question on Facebook? Because you already know the answer. You already know what the extreme left is going to scream at you when you say something, or the extreme right is going to scream at you when you say something. So what's the point of it all? So I lost faith in that approach, but I'm trying to re-engage in a responsible way on Facebook. LinkedIn, we believe, we're much more active on LinkedIn. How do we report? Ultimately, I keep coming back, and I've said this since 2007 when we built the original sites. I always view it as all roads lead to Rome. Rome is your website or your destination, the thing you own, right? Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, those are just roads that lead to Rome. If you're having the conversations outside on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, those are important, they're nice. But ultimately, those conversations can go away tomorrow if the social media site shuts you down or takes issue with your content. You don't own that. You're not building you're building a crowd. You don't own the crowd. And it's a really risky thing to have so much at stake on third-party platforms when you can't control. Like, I want to control the quality of our content. I want to see who posts comments on our site, and I want to approve those comments. And if I don't approve a comment, I should be able to say why.
No, that's great. That's fantastic.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, so another thing I wanted to ask about that we had gotten into a little bit right before we started recording was when you were talking about the how'd you put it? Opening the kimono a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So you've eaten your humble pie, but it's working. It's good. You've exited. And you were saying, that was really interesting in the idea that you actually sat down together with your new, acquirer to form the business plan.
Yeah. And I just want to be careful. I haven't exited. I'm here. Our team is here. We're here.
Thank you. Thank you for the correction.
So there's an entrepreneur exit. We've been acquired. But yeah, and
Thank you.
I use the word exit all the time as well, but I just want to clarify that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Opening the kimono, what I meant by that, and this was before we came on camera, the three of us were brainstorming a little bit. I think there was a lot of shared brainstorming that went on between us, Channel E2E and MSSP Alert, our brands. Our company was called After Nines. So that brand After Nine, or that company After Nines, we spoke a lot with the ownership of Cyber Risk Alliance. And Cyber Risk Alliance, to their credit, the executive team there said, let's build a business plan for post-acquisition. What does this look like? And I got to be honest, at first I was nervous. I'm like, you don't even own us yet, and you're asking us to brainstorm where we're going. I don't want to give away. And this is just me talking to myself. I wasn't telling our buyer, that our potential suitor, this, but in my own head, I'm like, I'm nervous about this because I don't want to give away any company secrets. I don't want to give away my ideas. But it was a great process in terms of building a document that outlined, well, here's what we'll integrate first. Once we do these integrations in terms of our technologies and our platforms, then we'll build out, for instance, a face-to-face conference. When could we do that? Well, what if we did it in the second half of 2022? Okay, when and where, yada yada. Fast forward to present day, we're recording this conversation in April, and April of 2022. And we are launching our first face-to-face conference, MSSP Alert Live, in Washington, D.C. in September of 2022. So it's nice to see, like, you had a plan and you're executing against it. So, there's check marks, and it's a good reality check to make sure that everyone who was at that table, we're all keeping each other honest.
Yeah. How did you get over that trust hurdle, just for yourself, even if you only want to talk just personally,
Was that difficult?
No, I don't think it was difficult. I think that's just a matter of having a regular cadence. These discussions didn't go on for months. This was a really, really rapid M&A deal. God, if it took more than 6 weeks of discussions, I think it was between 6 and 8 weeks. I don't know. Maybe I'm blurring the lines, but it wasn't 6 months. I'll tell you that. And it wasn't 8 months or a year.
That's super fast.
Yes, and they were committed to it, and so were we, and it was like at least a weekly convo. And listen, when we came on the podcast today, the three of us were naturally laughing and interacting very quickly, right? And that's how the discussions were with Cyber Risk Alliance. The small talk comes up, your life journey comes up, and you suddenly realize, these folks on the other side of the table, we've got some things in common, we have some shared goals and ideas. Let's make a run at this. So the trust builds quickly.
And how do you maintain it, right? Because then you've got your dreams and you've got the stuff on paper, and now it's time to. You were saying execute. So how do you maintain the trust and the relationship
and the scalability of other people are involved? Now you and Amy have to kind of open up and work with other people.
I think I'm growing up a little bit, and I'll give you a prime example. and I shared this with the Cyber Risk Alliance team. I sort of gave them a confession of how I have to change, and here's what I basically told Cyber Risk Alliance. Like, I think I'm struggling a little bit, and here's why. It was nothing horrendous, but here's why I think I need to do a mindset change. And it went something like this: when you're a business owner, think of your business as a house. You control everything that goes on in that house. You control all the property around that house. Anyone steps on that lawn, you know it, right? And
right.
the guests you invite into the house, your readers, your sponsors, you treat them like gold, and like you're fanatical about the quality of this house, right? When you sell your business, it's no longer your house. And I'm not knocking that. I'm not saying the new ownership comes in and destroys the house. That's not the point at all. The new ownership cares so much about that house. But also, you have to totally adjust your mind and say, wait a minute, it's not a house anymore. What do you mean by that, Joe? The house that I used to own is now one apartment in a larger apartment complex. I'm one tenant in a group of tenants, because Cyber Risk Alliance has bought a bunch of companies. And I shouldn't say a bunch. They've carefully thought out in a thoughtful manner, buying 5, 6, 7, I forget the exact number of companies right now, and they understand how these apartments in the overall complex fit together. So the prime example would be if I have what seems to be a fire on my stovetop in my apartment, I should be worried about it. I should take care of it. I should alert the apartment owner. But I should also be careful about not screaming fire and driving everyone else in the apartment complex crazy,
Mm.
because maybe the apartment owner is working on something really big or hugely important that day for the greater good of the overall community,
Mm-hmm.
the greater good of the company. So that's a very long-winded way of saying,
Well,
No,
but
you
it's
have
such a
to.
clear.
I love that.
It's very clear though, and it's not. I don't think it's something that gets talked about very much in the conversation about when acquisitions do happen.
Right.
We kind of just talk about or hear about, okay, what does it mean for company X, and then you sort of don't really hear much about company X necessarily anymore.
And
but
it's still a journey.
Yeah.
And Joe, I'm just curious of like, where did you find that self-awareness, that self-clarity around who you were, and then be able to confess that?
yeah, admit it.
Well, you and I or the three of us are having this discussion in April of 2022. I probably had this epiphany in like February of 2022, which is 11 years after the first time we sold a business. So I'm not a quick study. It takes a while.
So those were lessons learned from the first time of like, okay, after we got acquired and we had kind of that exit offboarding, that 3-year journey, these were things that you had learned to go, man, I had to change. My mindset did not change, or just reflection back.
Right. And there's that. And I think there's also the appreciation and respect for the fact that I don't have the skills or talent or experience to build that massive apartment complex that I'm now part of.
Mm-hmm.
So while I have a great pride in that house that I co-built, and I now have great, incredible pride in that apartment, which is part of a bigger complex, I have to eat some humble pie and be like, well, I got a pretty nice apartment, but let me step outside the apartment and look at the complex. I could never dream of building this on my own. Like, the owners here are smarter than me in so many different ways. So, keep it in mind.
Yeah, how does that, when you think about yourself in relation, you're kind of talking about the perspective from the other, from the acquirer, but for you, when you step back and look at that apartment complex, I mean, how does that feel, or what does that change about the way you perhaps perceive your business or make decisions? Are you always thinking more about those other parties, or is that maybe a smaller part of your strategizing and growth?
No, listen. So the Cyber Risk Alliance has like a wonderful podcasting business, right? So we're brainstorming some things we could be doing there, and as I mentioned, they have a face-to-face, in-person conference business. So we're working with that group. So yes, there are the apartment complex mixers where you're brainstorming all this, but then there's the arrogant me who still loves to be. I tend to be an introvert. I tend to be quiet.
No
people
way.
find that surprise. Yeah, no, it's true. Is that you?
No, she just said
Jen,
no
is
way,
that you?
and then you said people find it surprising.
Yeah, I'm surprised that because you don't exhibit introvert quality, the characteristics.
Well, so I enjoy holding up a mirror to the industry. I don't enjoy being. Someone once gave me a great lesson. I was at Windows Magazine in like 1998 at Information Week, and one of my editors there was super smart, and he said, "Remember something, Joe. You cover the industry. You're not part of it."
Mm.
And it was a good lesson in terms of just and I you don't hear from me much outside of what's going on in the industry. I used to blog a little bit about my life, but not much. So I take a lot of pride in communicating what's going on with our readership. That's what I love. It's sort of like and I'm not comparing my talent to Billy Joel at all. I'm just comparing I'm comparing how we spend our time. So Billy Joel will write a song about, scenes from an Italian restaurant, and he'll share this story about a couple sitting in a restaurant and their high school days and that whole journey, right?
Yeah.
And it's an unbelievable story. But that doesn't mean Billy Joel's an extrovert and wants to be talking about his own life forever. I love telling other people's stories, but I'm not that outgoing, especially in big groups. I'm
Yeah.
very comfortable, like the three of us. So that's
Well,
good.
That's
It's
very
the thousands
similar.
of people who will ultimately consume this. It's like, I'm good one-on-one. Feel free to
that's
say
right.
hi.
Well, I love that. Someone told me, and you kind of mentioned it, of being the mirror. Of there are people in that are naturally the light, and there are people
who
that are
shine the
naturally
light.
the mirror that shines the light, or shines the reflection so that the light gets amplified. And sometimes
Right.
as founders, you might have to, and business leaders, you have to sometimes be the light. But yeah, so I laugh because I am a natural introvert. I am not an extrovert.
See, that's
Yeah, I
interesting.
picked that up immediately when you laughed at my
Yeah, I
comment,
was
and I
like,
think
cause I
I
feel
think a
you.
lot of entrepreneurs are that way. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are introverts.
Yeah, we play the game of extrovert, but we are not
Yeah.
natural.
I was thinking like, oh, that's the journalist, because that was actually my background. The
Right.
PR thing was shorter, and I thought, oh yeah, no, totally. Like, you love the one-on-one, you love digging into other people's stories, and you like really don't want to get into your own.
We're the
Right.
mirror.
Yeah,
We're the
yeah.
mirror.
Yeah.
But it's great.
Yeah.
And I think, that's one of the things that is really fantastic about the business that you've built is it's just those stories. I mean, I've like watched companies grow through because there are folks that other industry publications aren't maybe necessarily like digging into their stories as much or sticking with them, with their journey in the same way.
That's an interesting point, and that's something I think that I'm always aware of, and it sounds like I think your team is as well, and that is on our media sites, both the current sites that we run and the previous ones we built, we would cover companies with 5 employees, but I knew they were in a niche or a market where if they did just right, like, listen, they may not be the next Microsoft or Cisco, but they're going to be relevant and they're going to be big. And so you have to take the time to not only cover the giants, the Amazons and the Microsofts and the Apples of the world, but remember, like, I'm sure this is trademarked somewhere, but remember the entrepreneur. Like, just trademark, bold, underline, caps. Remember the entrepreneur, because that's what makes the world go round in America is the entrepreneurs, and the small businesses they're building will become something. So you better be keeping your eye on them.
Yeah, and I love hearing what you're saying and how you built, because I feel like that's what we're doing with Orange Whip and our digital zines, our own media company, because we always have that checkpoint of we are serving the founders and entrepreneurs and storytelling and what content that they need. And even though we get feedback from outside organizations that are like, you need to do it this way, or we're like, that doesn't serve them. That's not what we've heard from founders and entrepreneurs. Of what they feel like is missing in their local market, or like these conversations. And so that's kind of so it's refreshing to hear you have been successful because you have focused on your readers, the viewers, and what are you doing to serve them. And I feel good that we're creating something that is to serve a very niche
a group in each community.
And a group in each community, but it's that founder and entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's like I'm just like dying to get to is the part where we're still behind the curtain like you were for 6 months, and I'm just so excited to get to the part where I hope it's feedback that makes us feel good, but whatever feedback it is, like, is this what you really want? Like, is this what you really need?
Did you get any negative feedback? Was there any kind of pushback of, hey, you think
Oh
that's
yeah,
great?
yeah. So
but
I'll give
it
you a
sucks.
prime example. No, I'll give you a prime example. So the first media site we launched in 2008, it officially went live in January of 2008. It was a website called MSP Mentor, so it covered managed service providers. So that was January of 2008. In September of 2007, before we even launched the site, I built it must have been SurveyMonkey. I built a survey because I wanted to have a list similar to the Inc. 5000 or similar to the Fortune 500, but for MSPs.
Oh yeah.
And it was a survey of MSPs, right? And so I opened the survey. We launched the site. and a lot of people loved it, but there was probably 20% who were saying, "Who are you to do this? Like, who do you think you are that you can do this?" And you know what? That's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
That's an absolute legitimate question. And the answer is there's a void, and I'm out to fill it. And I'm also out to put a spotlight on the world's most successful MSPs. Fast forward to present day, that list that we built, that annual research, lives on today. It's known as the MSP 501. It's run by Channel Futures, which was one of the long-winded story. That brand now has all the content we built from our previous business. And I'm proud that it still exists. So yeah, there was initial like pushback, and originally it was a top 100 list. Then we grew it to 200. And then, people who were ranked 295 are like, "Hey, make a bigger list." So I get on it. So we took it, and I don't like to do things traditionally. So it could have been a 500 list. And I'm like, 501 is going to be upset with us. So we'll make it 501.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, there's always constructive criticism. And I think the important thing is listen to it. Is there something you can learn from it? Can you course correct? But to your point, as long as you're serving your audience and that's your true north, you'll be fine.
That's awesome.
That's good.
Well, that's a good place
Thank you.
to stop. We are out of time. These things go so fast.
I know.
Every
I
time.
could talk to you for a long time, Joe. I appreciate it.
And vice versa. Please keep me posted on your journey. I'd love to hear more. And can I ask you one question? Orange Whip, what inspired that name?
So that's a great question, and I love to answer it. So I had founded a full-service marketing and advertising agency in 2013. Joe, I've been on the other side of media. I grew up in the agency space for 25 years on the media buying strategy. So I've worked with over 1,000 publishers, globally over my lifetime in all sorts of categories. But I opened up my marketing advertising agency in 2013, and it's called Brightco Marketing, and the color scheme is orange. Because the color of orange inspires forward thinking, solutions, more servant leadership of how do we serve the business community in a better way. And so when we were coming up with we saw the gap within the founder and entrepreneur community, not just here Greenville, but we started talking with these groups of entrepreneurs and founders across the country of there is not a hyper local media outlet that is unfiltered or independent that's really bringing both aggregation of content, so like resource directories and events, but also kind of the navigation through storytelling and amplifying both the voices and the viewpoints of what entrepreneurship means, but also amplifying some of the viewpoints of the organizations that are fueling those local innovation economies. And so as we started looking at, we saw a void. And I'm like, well, do we let somebody else start the company? As an advisor was like, somebody's going to do it. There's a void there. You've identified it. Why don't you start it? So our journey started in December of 2021. And then we came up with the name over really Christmas break. I kind of wrote out the business plan, started talking to Jennifer because I've known her for about a decade on the PR and content side, and I was like, I need a reporter. Like, I've never built a media company. I build brands, but I've never built a media product before. I've negotiated it. I completely appreciate and respect what publishers go through of it's both content, but it's also serving the subscribers and all the data behind that. And the energy around being that respected media outlet with whatever that space is, but I've never built the product itself. So Orange came from a nod to Brightco, Orange, and then Whip is work in progress.
Boy, awesome. Is it ever.
So that was kind of the mentality of, because we feel like as founders, we are always a work in progress.
Amen.
And as entrepreneurs, we're always a work in progress, both as a professional development of, look, I'm on a CEO journey. I'm not perfect. I'm still learning. Like and then also the business. And it's like, I call it, it's like birthing, children over and over again. Those cycles just continue.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, we have so much in common in terms
of
the way we think. Yeah.
And so the media products for these local zines, it's whatever the city innovates. So GVLinnovates.com, Cola Innovates for Columbia, and Charleston, it's ChazInnovates.com. But Hello Chaos we've got to have other diversification of our content, storytelling, and why we want to do podcasting and Hello Chaos is exactly how you thought. We live in a world of chaos, but it becomes how do we organize it? How do we structure it? But I think as an entrepreneur, we're always like, welcome it. Like we have the mindset of it is. So it was kind of that, hello chaos, bring it on. Like we're ready to go. And really telling these stories of these different founder mindsets, and so that's
you're on a
the
wonderful
foundation.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time and jumping
same
off.
Here. Thank you
so much going
for all
on.
your help over the years. I appreciate it, and thank you for sharing some information about or sharing your stories, for lack of a better term. I love hearing about what you're up to, and I look forward to hearing about the milestones and
we
each
will.
new sort of increment.
We will keep you posted.
Yeah.
And for those
Excellent.
that want to listen to the podcast, we will be publishing and to all your favorite podcast platforms.
Every one of them.
Every one of them. They'll be available. So look out for it. It's Hello Chaos Podcast. If you want to watch the podcast, these will be available on the Orange Web website, so orangeweb.com, or distributed through these local zines. Again, starting out at Greenville, Charleston, and Columbia as our first endeavor of launches, and we're going to be coming to cities all across the country as we move forward. So hope you will listen and subscribe and comment and share. Let us know who you'd like to hear from. More Joes out there.
I know, right?
Like if if we need to bring people back and have like follow-up conversations, we want to hear that feedback. So hopefully you will subscribe and share.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, I'll be there. Thank you very much for your time, guys.
Thank
Have a
you,
great
Joe.
afternoon, and good luck with
You
the
too.
journey.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.